Well, hello once again and welcome to the Waters and Stanton video channel. My name's Peter Waters, call sign is G30JV. I'm going to talk about receivers or receiver reception and how you can improve it, not by any particular additional outlays, but by simply understanding perhaps how your receiver can be set up to work better. You know, many years ago it was quite common to delve inside the equipment with a soldering iron, and even commercial equipment you could delve inside with a soldering iron and change things, but I'm afraid things have changed now, and any experimentation that you do on modern equipment really shouldn't involve a soldering iron, because you'll probably damage it. The components are too small anyway and the warranty will be invalidated. So there are some things that we can do though on the receiver in order to make it work better than perhaps it just, you switch on the receiver, turn the volume control up and off you go, you're receiving. But most receivers in the transceivers, most transceivers these days have got facilities in the receiver that enable you to improve things. Now, I know that noise is one of the problems that we all have, or at least most of us have, unless you live on some remote island miles from anywhere. Lucky for you. So noise is something that we have to live with, I'm afraid, but there are things that we can do in the receiver to make it a little better. So what I want to do today is to run through some things that you can do on your transceiver that may well help you to get better reception, and it's worthwhile making yourself a cup of coffee and just fiddling with it. Now, I'm going to use the IC-7300 for this demonstration because that's the transceiver that I've got here. But a lot of the things I'm going to do will be on your particular transceiver of a different maker or a different model. So let's take a look. The first two things I'm going to talk about is the speaker on the top and the RF gain control. Now, I've mentioned these before, but I'm just going to mention them again in case you've missed the video. That's with my hand behind the speaker. Now, I'm not suggesting that you should put your hand behind the speaker all the time, but you can make up a bit of card or something to deflect that sound forward, because it does make a big difference to the intelligibility. I think that demonstrates the benefit of having some form of reflector behind the speaker. Now let's have a look at the RF gain control, a control that is regularly ignored and often turned up far too much. I've got the RF gain set at maximum at the moment. The preamp is turned off, and you can see on the display the background noise, which is the sort of bluish tinge. And I'm going to tune across the band now. Just turn the volume up so you can hear. I'm going to tune from 3.7 to 3.8. You can hear the noise coming up in between the signals. Nothing much here at the top. Go back down again. And you can hear that. You can hear the noise coming up in between. I'm now going to turn the RF gain control back to what I perceive to be my noise floor. And you see it's turning black now. And that's roughly where I'm seeing my noise floor. Now I'm going to tune across the band again. See how much more pleasant it is. Just turn the audio. You can hear how much more comfortable that is. I'm not losing any signals. I just haven't got that background noise in between. And this actually reminds me of what it used to be like many years ago. But all we've done is reduce the RF gain so that the background noise floor is quite low. And when I say noise floor, I'm not talking about noise floor of the receiver, I'm talking noise floor of my locality. It's much more comfortable. So there we are. That's a benefit of turning the RF gain control down. A lot of transceivers these days provide the means of adjusting the receiver tone controls, in other words bass and treble. Anything below about 200 or 300 Hz doesn't carry any useful information. And likewise, anything above 2000 Hz, 2 kHz, doesn't carry any information that's of use. But the receiver certainly passes a lot of information in the way of noise in those frequency bands. So it stands to reason that if we can cut down the amount of treble above, say, 2 kHz and the amount of bass below, say, 200 or 300 Hz, then that noise will be reduced. And if we reduce that noise, it's going to make intelligibility that much better. So let's take a look and see how the ICOM IC-7300 handles this. We press the menu button there, and then we go to set. We've got something up here which says tone control, which at first glance you might think would be something to do with repeater access or some sort of data thing. In actual fact, it's nothing of the sort. Press that, and it takes us into a choice of receiver or transmitter. So we're going to go for RX. Press RX, and we've got a choice of modes. So we're going to go into sideband. Press sideband, and we've got a choice of high pass, low pass filters, or treble or bass. In actual fact, they're very similar. I use this one here, so let's select that. Now that's currently been set at my preference, which is a high pass filter on the left here, which is set at 200 Hz, and a low pass filter on the right, which is set at 2000 Hz or 2 kHz. That represents the audio passband. Now you can adjust both of these. If you press that one there and you use the main tuning dial, you can adjust it from 0 up to about 400 or 500. Really and truly, I set mine at 200 Hz because there's nothing useful under 200 Hz. So you might as well set it at 200. You could set it at 300 actually, because almost the same applies, but I set mine at 200. And then on the other side we've got this one here, which goes up to 2400 I think, and then off the scale. As this is a low pass filter, it determines what is going to be set below that frequency, what's going to be passed below that frequency. I set mine at 2000 Hz, 2 kHz, on the basis that there's nothing very useful above 2 kHz in terms of audio intelligibility, and all that I'm going to get really is an increase in noise. So I've set mine at 200 Hz high pass filter, 2 kHz low pass filter. That gives me an audio passband of 1.8 kHz. So let's see now if we can find a signal just to demonstrate the treble response.
It doesn't matter. I got this contract. It made me happy. It made me very happy. Thank you for that. thought we'd get another QFL. Enjoy the hobby, enjoy the DXing, you put out a very nice signal. I hear not much on the band, but you're one of the strongest, that's for sure. MI0SDR 086CHI, oh well done.
Now we're going to have a look at the receiver IF bandwidth. Now this is one of the most important things because it affects your signal to noise ratio. It enables you to reject interference either side of the signal, and as we narrow the filter, as I say, we can improve our signal to noise ratio. So if you've got a noise problem, you need to pay attention to your IF bandwidth because it can have a significant effect. If you've got a modern transceiver, it's almost certain you've got some control over your IF bandwidth. You can narrow it or select different filters, and you've probably got passband tuning as well, which again is quite an important feature. I'm going to use the IC-7300 once again because that's what I've got to hand, but I would encourage you to look at the handbook of the receiver or transceiver that you have and get to grips with how that works and the various adjustments. I think if you look at the IC-7300, you'll get the idea of the principle and you can apply it to your own transceiver. Maybe you've got an IC-7300, I don't know. Anyway, let's take a look. On the ICOM IC-7300, we've got a choice of 3 IF or passband filters. That's shown at the top there. We've got filter 1, tap it again, we get filter 2, tap it once more, we get filter 3, and tap it again, go through them again, we get back to filter 1. So it cycles through filter 1, 2 and 3. We hold this in for about a second. You'll see up on the screen comes the filter menu. Now we're on filter 1 at the moment, which is the widest filter, and that defaults, DEF stands for default, that defaults to 3000 Hertz. If we hold this bandwidth control in there, it enables us to adjust the filter width with the main dial, and we can go up to 3600 Hertz, which is rather wide because at 3600 Hertz, not only will you get the sideband signal at quite good fidelity, but you'll also get a lot of high frequency noise which perhaps you don't want. And if we reduce the bandwidth down to say around about 2.6 kilohertz, you'll hear very little difference in the quality of the sideband signal, but you will have reduced that high frequency noise. Now, the great thing about this, of course, is you can personalize it. You can go down to 2.4, whatever, but bearing in mind you've got 2 other filter positions, you might as well set that at a reasonable level. Somebody that I know actually prefers 2.8. It's a personal preference. The point is, you can now set that filter 1 to whatever bandwidth you want. And if we press that, we come out of it. Let's now select filter 2 and change that. So we go to filter 2, hold it in, and filter 2 is actually set at 2.4 kilohertz, which actually is my personal preference for that filter. So we'll leave that at that, but if we wanted to change it, we just press the bandwidth control there and we can change it to whatever we like. We'll leave that at 2.4 kilohertz. And if we go to filter 3, I've set it at 1.8, and again that is my personal preference, so I won't change that, but you can if you want to change it to 1.7. Anything below 1.8 starts to get a bit narrow, so I would suggest, but you can try, it's trial and error, I would suggest 1.8 is probably about the narrowest you want to go for sideband. And then when we press that control, we've come out and we're back into our main radio, and we've got our 3 filter controls set at 2.8, 2.4 and 1.8. The IC-7300 has got dual passband tuning, which is quite common on a lot of transceivers. If I press this control in, you'll see very briefly the filter comes up on the screen. It's showing 2.8 and it's soft. If I press this control in, it centers the filter. So we're centered on 2.8, which is the filter bandwidth which we set for FL1. If I rotate the outer, or central control rather, anti-clockwise, I'm moving the filter in an LF direction. And as I do so, you'll see the bandwidth has changed. It's gone down to 1.6 kilohertz or so. But I can now rotate the outer control and move the other passband down so that it's almost over the top of it. And now we've got 2.8, we're back to 2.8 kilohertz, but the filter is now moved well LF into the passband, so we've effectively quite dramatically reduced the upper frequencies and accentuated the lower frequencies, even though we've still preserved the 2.8 kilohertz bandwidth. Hold that in again, we center it again. Now we can go in the opposite direction. The center control, we turn clockwise, and so we're moving the filter in the higher frequency of the passband. And again, you'll see that we've reduced the bandwidth. We're down to 1.8 there. But if I take this outer control and move it almost in line, there we are, 2.8. So we've now got 2.8 kilohertz filter, but it's now centered, rather it's now favouring the upper part of the passband, which gives you a boost in treble frequencies and a reduction in bass frequencies. And of course this is infinitely controllable. Press that again and it's back to the centre. Now if we move these controls in opposite directions, we move the centre one a bit LF, like that, and then we move the other control in the opposite direction a bit HF. We're actually now reducing the bandwidth. So we've actually reduced the bandwidth from 2.8 kilohertz to 1.6 kilohertz. Rather narrow for sideband, but the principle is there. So you can either move the filters together and preserve the bandwidth, or you can move them in opposite directions and reduce the bandwidth.
Having some look now with the Manor GAL, the software for modelling antennas, I tried to model an edge bed. It's quite a complicated edge bed because I want to use it. Maybe I'll have to stick something into West Park on Thursday for the...
Well, there we are. That's running through filters and bass and treble, etc, etc. All these of course are cumulative. There's one other thing which I would mention, which I haven't demonstrated here. If you have DSP on your transceiver, DSP noise reduction, I've found that the noise reduction performance seems to be improved if you put a bit of treble boost, not by adjusting the bass and treble response on the receiver, but by moving the passband HF slightly. So if you move the IF passband HF slightly, give it a bit of treble boost, and it will bring up the noise a bit, but in actual fact when you put the noise reduction in, you'll find that the performance seems to be better. In other words, the noise reduction seems to benefit if there's a bit of treble boost, and I can only assume that the noise reduction, certainly on the tests I've carried out, and it's not just on the 7300, it's also on the Ellicraft K3, I've found that the noise reduction seems to work better if you put a bit of treble boost on. So next time you use the noise reduction control, first of all set your passband tuning so that you're shifting the IF passband slightly HF up the passband. You'll hear the treble boost come up, but when you put the noise reduction in, I think you'll find that you get a better performance. So that's a tip that I found. So many thanks for watching this video. I hope it's proved informative, and don't forget the transceiver that you have won't have the same controls that I've been demonstrating on the IC-7300, but if not all of them, I'm sure it's got some of them. One other thing I would mention is AGC, automatic gain control. Set that to a fairly slow speed. If it's too fast, you're going to get the noise coming up between stations and syllables and so forth. So put that onto a slow setting and then you'll find that more comfortable as well. So there we are. At Waters and Stanton, we try to make these videos interesting. At least I do anyway. And we do try and get to grips with all the various gear that we sell. It's not easy, but something like the IC-7300 has been worth using, and I have enjoyed using it. It's a good value. I mean, it's just short of £1,200, although we do deals, so don't be frightened to give us a call and have a chat to one of our sales guys. We'll certainly match any deals you may see on the internet, so just give us a call, and you'll have the assurance, of course, that we will be behind you. We'll give you a good an honest warranty, 2 years, backed by ICOM UK, who we've got a very good relationship, I think, with the oldest dealer actually of ICOM UK. So there we are. As usual, if you haven't pressed subscribe, press subscribe, and that means to say you'll be alerted to any future videos. I would say that we don't claim to be the world's favourite ham dealer. That self-acclaimed accolade seems to have been taken up by a number of dealers around the world, but we have been around for a long time. Here we are. Enjoy your ham radio. Speak soon.